Hello, I'd like to talk about Silent Hill Shattered Memories. Shattered Memories is for Wii, PS2, and PSP, and it's pretty interesting in that they really tried to take the series sort of in a different direction, and while it theoretically was a remake of the first game, it wasn't really a remake of the first game at all. I'm not entirely sure why they sort of tied it into the first game. I mean, rather than just saying like, hey, here's new characters and new settings. But they do some interesting things because they really want to hit home that it's a psychological horror game. So they have these scenes where you're interacting with a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and well, someone who's been seeing psychologists and psychiatrists for I don't know 12 years, I found it a little ridiculous and unrealistic. I think they at least get an A for effort. I'm not sure. If they wanted to really, I mean, obviously you have to serve the gameplay needs first, and so some of that actually ties into the experience of the game. But for me, the interesting thing about Shattered Memories was they moved away from combat. So they have these, well, firstly, there's no enemies for most of the game, or at least large portions of the game. There's only enemies in these sort of chase sequences, and you can't really fight them. You have to avoid them. So I think that's really cool, and just the lack of monsters I thought was a really nice touch, and you can't fight them. You're very vulnerable. And the other neat thing they did was if you play it on the Wii, which it was really designed around the Wii, is they make the Wiimote feel like a mobile phone. And certainly, if you have the Wii U or something with a screen in it, you could probably do an even better job of it. But basically, like, it rings on the phone, and you press the buttons to use different phone features. And so I thought that was really cool. I like the idea of sort of the immersion extending into the real world, and sort of the physicality of interacting with a phone. I guess maybe with smart glass or something on the Xbox they could do an actual phone. I don't know. Anyway, so they definitely did a lot of things right, and there's a lot of cool stuff in the game. But I feel like there was also sort of some really bad flaws. First of all, the chase sequences, while I think they're really great in theory, in practice were just awful. Like, oh my gosh, there's another chase sequence, because basically they take place in the game environment, and you have to run from one point to another and avoid all these enemies, but it's often not clear how to get from one point to the other at all. And while your phone has a map, sometimes it doesn't have like the inside of buildings that you're running through, and then sometimes and usually I think if you bring up the map during these chase sequences, you basically get killed. So it's just these terrible trial and error segments that are extremely frustrating. Even I used a walkthrough, and then it's like, make a left at the second door, and then a right on the third, outcropping, and so I mean, like, even like with a walkthrough, it's still difficult to figure out where to go, and still frustrating. So while I really like the idea behind them, I think the execution was a bit flawed. The other thing is, instead of the other world, they have like the winter world, which I feel like probably could be creepy and stuff, but to me, I grew up in Michigan, where it's very cold and very there's plenty of snow during the winter, so like the other world, or the snowy other world, was just kind of like, been there, done that. wasn't really surprising or shocking or unpleasant. I mean, granted, I probably wouldn't like to be in the snow again, especially now that I'm living in California, but not overly threatening. So I felt like that sort of muted the horror or the fear in the Silent Hill game. And finally, the ending was like super predictable. I don't know. Like maybe I read a review or something. I don't know, but like basically the entire game, I knew exactly what the ending was going to be, and then sure enough, that was what it was. And uh, that was that was a little disappointing because I think they were trying to do some interesting things narratively. That since somehow going in, either I just assumed or I somehow heard it before. That sort of weakened the twist or the surprise in the ending, or at least I assume it was supposed to be surprising. But all in all, I think it was a very interesting game, and I enjoyed playing it. I liked the immersion aspect of the phone, and I liked the lack of combat and the vulnerability of the character. Although I think the chase sequences were really really frustrating. But there's basically only one enemy, and there's pretty much no boss fights, which I think is almost daring to do in a horror game, and certainly I think it came before Amnesia. I don't know, maybe not, but it definitely was like that. So maybe one inspired the other, or influenced the other. But yeah, definitely interesting sort of game in the spectrum of Silent Hill games. It sort of stands out as unique and interesting.